Police lights carved through the pre-dawn gloom, their red and blue strobes flashing like a fevered pulse across my lawn. I stood in the doorway, hands clamped on the knob, exhaustion seeping into my bones like cold mud. Rubbing my eyes, I tried to make sense of the circus unfolding before me. Lydia Monroe, the self-anointed HOA tyrant who'd held our neighborhood hostage for years, stood on the sidewalk, arms crossed, a smug grin plastered on her face as if she were the queen of the cul-de-sac. She was weaving her sob story for the officers, playing the wounded martyr, accusing me of blocking her guests from parking in my driveway. Let's rewind. I'm the guy who caught her siphoning my well water to feed her pristine garden. And my response? I flushed her irrigation system with sewage, legally, naturally. That was just the prelude. Now, here she was, turning my legally parked truck into her latest vendetta. The officers fought to keep straight faces as Lydia ranted, her voice a piercing wail, claiming my truck, parked dead center in my driveway, was half a foot too far out, forcing her precious guests to park across the street instead of claiming my space. I was bone-tired, frustration simmering, but above all, I was gobsmacked. How had it come to this? "Sir, it's a simple request," one officer said, his tone steady but tinged with disbelief. "If you could move the truck so her guests can park, we won't have to escalate." I blinked, the word jarring me. "Escalate?" I scoffed, the absurdity slamming into me like a runaway train. "What is this? A global crisis over parking spots?" I wasn't going for laughs, but the sheer lunacy of it all was choking. Lydia didn't spare me a glance, too busy basking in her performance, her self-righteousness practically glowing. "I've lived here 20 years and never had trouble with neighbors until this guy showed up," she declared, pointing at me like I was a stray cat. "Now he's causing problems for my guests. They should be able to park wherever they need." I shook my head, jaw clenched. This wasn't about parking or her so-called guests. It was about control. Lydia had spent years bending the HOA to her will, and I was her latest fixation. But I wasn't playing her game. "Ma'am, could you—" An officer tried, but Lydia was a runaway freight train, her voice soaring to a glass-shattering pitch. "I just want to be treated fairly," she snapped, hands flailing like a bad stage actor. "Why should my guests park across the street like second-class citizens? This is a neighborhood, not a parking lot. This guy is causing trouble for everyone." I opened my mouth, but the officer cut me off, probably desperate to avoid a street brawl. "Sir, if you just move the truck, we'll be out of your hair." That's when it hit me. Lydia didn't give a damn about fairness or anyone's needs but her own. This was the same woman who'd stormed my yard to scold me about sidewalk weeds while her garden thrived, irrigated by water she'd stolen from my private well for months, acting like HOA rules were beneath her. I'd already handled that, flushing her system with sewage as a legal wake-up call. Now she was back, thinking her petty crusades made her invincible. She fed on bullying people into submission, expecting them to fold. Not this time. "Officer," I said, voice calm but laced with a razor's edge of sarcasm, "you're asking me to move my truck because her guests can't be bothered to park on the street like everyone else. Am I hearing that right?" The officer gave me a weary look but stayed silent. Lydia huffed, "I've been nothing but reasonable, and this is how I'm treated." She was winding up for another tirade. I'd had enough. With a sly grin, I turned and walked back inside, leaving Lydia and the officers standing there, jaws slack. I wasn't moving the truck, and I wasn't groveling. This was just the opening salvo. As I closed the door, Lydia's voice hit a banshee screech. "I'll call 911. I chuckled. It wasn't an emergency, but she could turn a stubbed toe into a national incident. Slumping onto my couch, I could still hear her outside, spinning her victim narrative, painting me as the neighborhood's public enemy. This wasn't about parking anymore. It was her obsession with control, her need to micromanage every blade of grass, every parked car. My phone buzzed, an HOA email, another passive-aggressive jab. They'd been hounding me since Lydia's campaign began, first for loud noises because I mowed my lawn at 10 a.m., Then for a hairline crack in my mailbox, which she claimed violated community standards. The HOA never bothered with my side. They were her marionettes, dancing to her every whim. That's when I knew I had to fight back on my turf. The HOA wasn't my ally, and neither were the officers if they kept humouring her. Sirens wailed again. Closer now. Of course. Lydia had called 911 again. I peeked through the blinds. 2 more squad cars, lights blazing like a blockbuster set. Lydia was in peak drama mode, crocodile tears streaming, playing the wronged saint. "This man's out of control," she wailed, voice quivering with rehearsed distress. "He's blocking my driveway, and my guests can't park. I've never been treated like this." The officers looked like they'd rather be anywhere else, dragged into HOA nonsense at this godforsaken hour. "Ma'am, explain what happened," one asked, voice heavy with fatigue. Lydia shot me a venomous glare before diving into her tale. "He's been trouble since he moved in, and now he's blocking my driveway so my guests can't park. I'm just trying to get them settled, and he's making it impossible. This is a family neighbourhood, not a circus." I barely stifled an eye roll. A family neighbourhood? She was acting like I'd chained her guests to a lamppost. The officer eyed my truck, parked legally, not an inch out of line. "Could you move it, sir, to avoid escalation?" he asked. I shook my head, resolute. "I'm not moving it. It's where it belongs. She can park across the street. There's plenty of space." Lydia's smug mask cracked. "This is unbelievable," she shrieked, hitting a pitch that could wake the dead. She dialed 911 again, fake sobbing to the dispatcher. "This man refuses to move his truck. It's blocking my driveway, and I'm at my wit's end." I saw it clear as day. She had no intention of letting this go. She'd drag this out, make my life hell until I broke. But I wouldn't. If she wanted a war, I'd fight it my way. Morning brought an eerie quiet. No Lydia screaming in my yard, no HOA emails clogging my inbox. It was too still, and I wasn't naive enough to think she'd quit. Sipping strong coffee at my kitchen table, I mapped my counterstrike. Lydia's playbook relied on pressure, police visits, HOA complaints, banking on neighbours caving to her tantrums. She was used to people folding to avoid her wrath. Not me. I'd turn her game against her. Step 1, evidence. I couldn't let her control the narrative. I stepped outside, snapping photos of my truck from every angle, proving it was parked legally, nowhere near her driveway. Her guests had no excuse. Street parking was wide open. This was pure power play. Step 2, the HOA. I called their office, voice casual, and asked for the parking rules. The rep confirmed I was in the clear. No one could block a driveway, and my truck was fine. Lydia's gripe was baseless. For days, I watched her like a predator. Every time her guests parked in front of my driveway, a blatant violation, I snapped pictures. The HOA rules were ironclad, no blocking driveways even for a minute. Lydia lived by her own code, but I'd weaponize hers against her. I sent an anonymous email to the HOA, attaching photos of Lydia's guests blocking my driveway, citing the parking policy, and mentioning her 911 escalation. I noted I'd loop in local authorities if they ignored it. Hitting send, I smirked. She'd turned the HOA into her bludgeon. Now I was swinging it back. Lydia grew paranoid, peering from her window, sensing the noose tightening. I kept gathering evidence, building a case she couldn't wriggle out of. Then the HOA emailed a resolution session to address our disturbances. This was my shot. I walked into the meeting with a folder of evidence, photos, emails, the parking policy, logs of Lydia's violations. The room was cold. Long table, stiff chairs, a whiteboard, a pile of paperwork. The board members sat, faces blank, but the air crackled with tension. Lydia perched at the table's end, arms crossed, her smug smile screaming she thought she'd already won. I took a seat across, locking eyes with her, calm but unyielding. She launched into her victim routine, claiming I was tearing the community apart by blocking her driveway. "I just want peace," she said, voice dripping with crocodile tears. "But this man makes it impossible." I stood, voice steady, and laid out the truth. Her demand to move my truck, my refusal because of ample street parking, her 911 call over nothing. I showed photos of my truck, parked legally, then photos of her guests blocking my driveway, flouting HOA rules. Lydia's smugness melted into shock. I slid the parking policy across the table, highlighting the no blocking rule. The board members exchanged stunned glances, the silence heavy. A board member finally spoke. "Lydia, it seems you violated the rules, not your neighbour." Her face flushed, humiliation cracking her armour. "That's not true. He's lying," she stammered, voice breaking. The board issued her a warning, flagging her guests' violations for further scrutiny. Lydia was trapped, her lies laid bare. Leaving the meeting, I felt a rush of triumph. I'd turned the HOA against her, using her own rules to topple her throne. She'd probably try again. Quitting wasn't in her DNA. But for now, I'd won. The neighbourhood could exhale, free from her petty tyranny. Back home, I sat on my porch, the sunset casting a warm glow. A neighbour waved, a rare spark of warmth. Lydia's grip was broken, and I'd made it happen, playing smarter, not louder. I'd shown you can outwit a despot with their own rulebook, one calculated move at a time.